If you're one of those people with a dark sense of humor and macabre interests, you might be really fascinated by the more intense, visceral, and disgusting elements of the biological experience. For example, you might be captivated by the grisly sight of a spider eating a large fly, or a cordyceps fungus infecting an insect. You might be amazed when you hear about weird and freaky things like snail reproduction, or the life of a male anglerfish, or the egg-laying process of a parasitoid wasp. This last phenomenon is what I want to talk about today in greater detail, as there was a study about parasitoid wasps that was published recently by the Journal of Virology. The paper is fascinating, as the background information is it's utterly brutal, exemplifying the pure indifference and raw utility of natural selection. In a sentence, the paper examines the frightfully effective evolutionary symbiosis between the parasitoid wasp species Diachasmomorpha longicaudata and an infectious poxvirus called Diep V. Now that's kind of an unwieldy acronym, but it's a lot better than its full name, which is Diachasmomorpha longicaudata enteropoxvirus. And so to avoid saying that name over and over again, I'm just going to be doing what the scientists do, and I'll call it Diep V. So let me briefly explain parasitoid wasps and these symbiotic viruses, and then we'll get into the paper. Now, wasps are naturally pretty aggressive animals, with formidable stingers, an intimidating morphology, and a predatory lifestyle. Some of them turn up the wicked meter by parasitizing a host, typically a large bug like a caterpillar or a spider. Now, the wasp doesn't eat the host, but instead, they'll lay their eggs in the host. And as the wasp eggs hatch, the squirming larva will eat the host from the inside out. And by the time these offspring emerge from the wet, hollowed-out corpse that acted as the vehicle of their birth, they are anatomically and sexually mature, able and ready to reproduce on their own. Among the parasitoid wasps, some species have evolved a symbiotic relationship with a virus, known as a polydNA virus. There are 53 species of these viruses, divided into two groups: the ichnoviruses, which live with the ichneumoniid wasps, and the brachoviruses, which live in the brachinid wasps. These polydNA viruses have integrated their DNA into that of their wasp host, such that when the wasp reproduces, the viral DNA is passed on into the offspring. Additionally, when the wasp bites a suitable animal, like a caterpillar or a fat spider, it'll get infected with these viral particles. Except these viral particles aren't carrying the virus's DNA, they're carrying the wasp's DNA. Evidently, the viral DNA has been trimmed, parsed, and refined to the point that what remains in the wasp's genome is almost completely limited to creating the viral particles themselves. Or in other words, they create the empty containers that will then be filled with clumps of wasp DNA coding for virulence factors, various enzymes and whatnot that all have a deleterious effect on the animal's immune system. In a nutshell, what this means is that this virus or this viral DNA will help the wasp's larva survive and thrive inside the host body. They're not being killed off or malformed by the host's immune system trying to fight off these parasitoid wasp eggs. The case of the wasp Diachasmomorpha longicaudata and this symbiotic Diep V is different. Diep V is not like the ichnoviruses or the brachoviruses. The new research paper found that Diep V represents a case of convergent evolution, where a unique virus has infected the wasp species. Instead of being fully domesticated into the wasp's genome, instead of being fully merged together and used by the wasp to carry its DNA like the other viruses, Diep V is actually relatively autonomous. To illustrate, this species of wasp, Diachasmomorpha longicaudata, they typically use fruit flies as hosts for their eggs. They'll bite a fruit fly, lay their eggs inside of its body, and then that poor fruit fly will go on to be food for the larva until they eat enough of it and then leave its body to go live their own lives. The Diachasmomorpha longicaudata belongs to the Brachynidae family. It's a brachinid wasp, and it has a symbiotic brachovirus in its genes that help carry its DNA into the host. But it also has Diep V. This newly identified enteropoxvirus has undergone convergent evolution, occupying the same niche and working in conjunction with the traditional brachoviral elements to become extremely infectious and damaging to the fruit fly host. The combined effect really helps the wasp. It really helps protect their larvae inside the fruit fly host. In the paper's abstract, the researchers say, quote, "Functional assays demonstrate that Diep V is highly virulent within fly hosts, and wasps without Diep V have severely reduced parasitism success compared to those with a typical viral load," unquote. So they're basically saying that those wasps that don't carry Diep V, they are much less successful at laying their eggs inside of a fruit fly host. The scientists also say that their results, quote, "demonstrate unique differences that suggest Diep V is more autonomous than other long-term viral associations described in parasitoid wasps," unquote. So the Diachasmomorpholongicaudata enteropoxvirus, or Diep V, isn't a fully domesticated virus that's been clipped and trimmed and embedded in the wasp genome. Diep V is embedded to the extent that it's passed down from wasp mother to wasp larva, but aside from that, it's relatively intact, so to speak. It hasn't been trimmed down to the barest essentials. And because it resides in the wasp's venom glands, any fruit fly that's bitten by the wasp will get infected with Diep V. The virus will then replicate inside the fruit fly and act autonomously from the wasp's virulence factors to severely weaken the fly's immune system. Its defenses effectively destroyed, the fruit fly is helpless to stop or harm the wasp larva, which will go on to eat it from the inside out, trading its death for their life, to facilitate the gory birth of new parasitoid wasps. This is a particularly brutal example of the indifference of nature. The chemical superreaction that is life will be sustained, evolving to use any means available, even if that means injecting your eggs into the body of something else, and co-opting the aid of a poxvirus to make sure that that something else can't fight back against your eggs, against your larva. This is a great example of the hardcore utility of the natural world, and it's one of the many reasons why biology is the coolest subject ever.